Hey guys, welcome back. Joe again here from ScaleFreak.com, coming to bring you the next step in the build of the Team Associated RC10F6 kit. This is the absolutely beautiful F1 kit that Team Associated has designed and released for us. In this video, what I'm going to do is back axle. Time to finish off the pod section and get this thing done. We've already done the suspension, the front, the linkage, the chassis, but we got to get some back axle on this thing, and that's what we're going to do here. So we'll install the shims, the bearings, the axle, and get the ball differential all set up. Now, first, one of the things that I want to note is this kit does come with some adjustability. A whole bunch of different parts here that you can adjust the length, the height of the axle, but you got to pay very close attention to the parts that you're using. They're all numbered, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the actual kit parts that it suggests that I use with the kit setup. Now, these ones you can't see on the camera, but it has a little tiny 0 on the top, exactly what the kit calls for. And you'll see on here, it does mention that you need to make sure you check the orientation of the actual little spacer that you're putting in here. You're going to want to put the little skinny side towards the front of that side, and all they do is just press in just like this. So 1, and make sure I'm putting the skinny side here, 2, just like that. So bang and bang. That is going to make sure that it's the correct height and the correct distance on the kit. If you flip them around, you put them upside down, you may get a wonky axle. Just please, guys, if you're going to pay attention to anything, pay attention to this part. Now, the bearings themselves are flanged bearings, which means that there's a little bit of a ledge on them. So they just press in from the outside, and they ain't going nowhere. So just like that, and like that. So boom, easy enough to fit. But guys, you just have to make sure that you use the correct orientation and you put them in the correct way. Now, for the axle themselves, this thing weighs next to nothing. It's like a graphite rod with this big bad boy here, and it's threaded in the end. You push this guy in here from the passenger side of the car, from the right side, slam it in, and of course when you're pushing the other side, just hold the bearing in place because it will try to push the bearing out. And it goes in just like that. Now on the other side, you've got this hub. These are huge. This is just going to go on the end like that. Now, one of the reasons why there's so much extra length here is, well, it's an axle, but these things are adjustable in width. You could move it in and out depending on where you want to do. Of course, you can make the car wider, you can make the car skinnier, you just have to shim it correctly. For this purpose of this video, I'm just going to build it just like it says, but check your local race rules. If you've got local race rules that say your back axle can be wider, you have that option. Just, again, make sure that you shim everything correctly. So there are a couple screws, 1 and 2, that I'm going to need to lock this thing down. So what this does, if I can pull this off here, it's got screws that go in. So basically you can see if I can angle it so you can see it right there. See, it's split down the middle. The whole purpose of this is the screws are going to lock it in so it squeezes tight down on this axle. Now, when you build it, don't like push these things together really tight because it will add some resistance from the side of the bearing. Just give it a little tiny bit, like not enough that the axle even moves left or right. Just don't smash it down so that it's actually like pressing against the bearings. You don't want to add all that extra kind of friction on there. So I'm just going to put these screws in just so they're in. Oh, sorry, Loctite. How did I forget this stuff? Definitely don't want these to back out, because if you do, you just lose a tire while you're driving. You lose a whole back axle. No big deal. You don't have to use much again, just enough to keep it in there. So there's 1. And here's 2. Okay, so now I'm going to set the width of this. Again, I don't want it to be off too far, just enough that it's not creating, like it's not pressing on itself. And then you might want to even measure later on when you get it all set, just to make sure that the left and the right are the exact same length. And again, you can just add shims to the inside of this just to make sure. Super easy to do. And then you're going to crank these suckers down kind of evenly on both sides. You just want to squeeze that axle so that the end is not going to come off. So there we go. So really, when tightening it, all you're doing is just putting a stranglehold so it's not coming off. You see, it still spins freely. we're good to go. So that is set on there. That's how that back axle goes on. This side is threaded for the tire. That side is threaded for the tire. But we're missing some parts here. What are we missing? Oh yeah, a differential. So pinion gear, ta-da! And we need all of these little parts. There's a lot of little parts in this, guys. Oh dear, I love building these. All right, so start selecting the correct bearings. They'll fit in. They'll be the exact width, everything. You don't really have to mess around too much. They'll just fit. Now, one of the things we're going to get involved with here, we are going to get involved with black grease and bearings. Well, bearing balls, I guess. I got to get another second here. I'm just going to bring over my little KRC parts tray, dump them out, make sure none of them are left in the bag. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the bad boys into this. So we've got, let me see here, make sure they fit in. Oh, if you're going to drop them, look for them, because once they go, they're gone. Put that on there, make sure you find the right holes. One. They pop in easy enough. And they actually stay in really well, which is good too. Whoops. Just please, guys, please, make sure you're working over top of something. So if you lose a ball, you can find it. Because these little guys, well, they're round, obviously, and they're very hard, so they are prone to bouncing if they hit a cement floor. But the good news is once they pop in, they try to stay in the gear, so they're not going to kind of pop through as long as you're careful with them. I'm gonna get these off the wall here. I can't pick them up with the foam. Now the neat thing about a ball diff is when set correctly, especially on an F1 kit, it will give you just the right amount of smooth. If you crank it down too tight, you'll have a very struggle time in the corners. If it's too loose, you'll have very poor acceleration. So you see all the balls are in there. You'll have very poor acceleration if it's too loose. If it's just right, you know it. So maybe if you're new to ball diffs, and again, I'm not the greatest with them, but if you're new to ball diffs, maybe go talk to someone at your local track that has a lot of experience in ball diffs and get them to help you set it up. It can make all the difference in your performance of your kit. And I understand the concept of it, but I am still a little weak on what is the perfect setting and what needs more development. Okay, so flipping it up on its side, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but, well, these rings have a notch on them, so just kind of, ta-da, make sure it fits in there. Then what's going to happen, of course, is this is going to go onto here, and then you'll have another ring that will go onto this part. Now, this does call for some black grease, and the purpose of this is, actually, sorry, no, this is the silicone grease that goes on here. This guy here, it comes with the kit. I'm going to, nip the tip off. Where's my knife? So, ta-da. I'm just going to pull this off here, smother it on this side, just get it in. Because remember, these balls all got to spin. They all got to turn. So, ta-da, and then just flip it over and do it to the other side as well. Just like that. Enough to coat them. So just like that. And then I'm going to install it like this on there. And then this other ring, I wonder if I can just kind of lean this up against the box. Maybe not. There we go. If you've got something better to lean it up against, be my guest. And then you can see this is going to eventually go on here like that. So what I will do now, there will be a couple bearings you have to fit in here. Okay, one here. And one is going to go deep on the inside. Now when you let go, that one will fall out. So what I tend to do is I'm going to start to build the internals of this differential. Now, the instructions, take your time with it, guys. Just take your time with it and learn exactly what you're going to do. One of the tips I like to do is put a driver through. And that helps you kind of align everything. It won't be perfect, but it will help you align it. So there's one. Then we're going to put on this little kind of like it holds everything in place. So pop like this. And you'll feel it will kind of seat into place when it's supposed to go there. You can even test it with another one just to make sure the bearing is seated in the bottom. Then after that, we're going to throw in this thrust bearing. So this is where you're going to use your black grease. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to use... Oh, the kit fell down. It's not necessarily a bad thing to use a little bit more on this, mainly because it will help stuff stick together. So when you're putting this thrust bearing together, pay attention to the race that's built into this. You'll see that these little guys here, you can kind of see the ledges in them. And this guy here, it's got those little balls in there like that. It's kind of neat. So get that in here. Comes out like mouse poop. Kind of looks like mouse poop, really. I don't really want to taste it. Not that I know what mouse poop tastes like. And like this. So it makes a bit of a mess. It's black grease. What's it supposed to do? So get it in there. Make a bit of a mess with it. I'm going to use a little more just because I can. They give you a whole tube. There we go. And then if you want, you can do this too, right? You can put it actually in this little guy like that. And it all sits inside there. Hold on, I gotta wipe my hands off. Ta-da! Always keep something nearby. Okay, so we've got, I'm gonna put this in here, put the bearing in, make sure it's seated correctly. Again, use the driver if you want. It fits in nice because of course this little piece is aluminum, so it fits exact. Let this guy drop down on it. Ta-da, like that. Use another driver just to make sure it's in there. Then we've got this kind of, it's called a Belleville Washer. Concave, 2 pieces. Make sure you read the instructions on exactly how it goes on there. So one goes, whoops, with the dish pointing up. And one goes with the dish pointing down. Like that. And then again, just seat it all down there. Now, be careful with this part. Pull this out. Don't let anything flip over. Ta-da. Put your other washer in the bottom. Like that. Flip your kit back up. Guys, don't forget this part right here, right? Put that on here. And then I put this on very carefully. And I use this just to make sure I hold it down. You can build it on the axle if you wanted to, but I find it easier to build it off. So I can drop it down like that. So boom, that's in there. Do not move. I'm going to do this quickly. I can't have this move. Nut driver. And then just put this on there so that nothing's going to boogie off on you. And don't crank it down yet because you got to make sure that this ring is seated correctly. So center it out and then just start turning this piece until you feel it click in. And you may need to move this around a little bit because it's obviously, there we go, boom, clicked in. Now, grab the nut driver and grab the other side of the axle and turn it down. Like that. Now what you're looking for, because see, now this is working like a differential. If I turn this way, the axle goes the other way on the other side. The way you want to crank this thing down, not crank it down, sorry, tighten it down, is so that when you're holding both sides, you can barely turn this with your thumb. That's actually probably a little too tight. So I'll just back it off a little tiny bit. Again, hold both sides and try to turn this with your thumb. Or your finger, whatever. You need to barely be able to turn it. Now, warning, if you crank this down too hard, you'll start to give your differential flat spots. Still a little too tight. There we go. That should be about it. That's a little too loose right now, but right now I'm just going to err on the side of caution and just leave it like that for now. Perfect. So then what you're going to do is you're going to put a cap on the end. So you grab a hold of this guy here, and this is going to go, watch the holes, right? So 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 hole. Watch the holes, put the cap on the end, take this dude here, put that in, get in there. It's got to line up or it doesn't go. Oh, here we go. Ta-da! And then there's a little tiny grub screw. Use your 1.5. And you don't have to crank this thing down, just rest it up against. Because you're going to have a wheel on this thing anyway, so it's not going to allow that pin to fall out. And there you go. That is your axle built. So now, of course, your tires go on. You've got these serrated nuts that go on top of that. And then that is your back axle for the kit. So just like that. Of course, your motor is going to connect to here. Your pinion goes direct to the spur, and it's a direct drive system. So that's how that's done. Got any questions? Put them in the comments field below. Please let me know if you do have any questions or comments about the ball diff build. These things do take a little bit to correctly break in, so you'll need to adjust them as you go, as well as while you're doing it. You will need to, what's what I'm looking for? You may need to tighten and loosen it as you're racing, because they break themselves in or they back themselves off, something like that. So they always need minor adjustments while you're racing, and just keep that in mind while you're doing it. If you find that when you jam the throttle, you're just sitting there and slowly taking off, you might need to tighten it. If you find when you jam the throttle and the sucker just starts going around like crazy, or when you go around corners, it becomes very difficult to turn, maybe loosen it off a little bit. But I actually recommend you go and watch somebody else's video on how to correctly adjust a ball differential, because I still have a lot to learn with that as well. But that's how the basic build goes. So guys, thank you very much. Click on the like, click on the subscribe, share the video with friends, and thanks for watching.